My name is Trisha Park. I'm Associate Director of Workshops here at Cleaver Magazine, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Cleaver Magazine's 50th issue contributors reading. We are so excited to share this milestone with all of you. Karen Ryle, our founding editor and chief editor of Cleaver, is not able to be here today. She is the reason why we are here. She and her daughter Lauren started Cleaver in 2013, and we are so, so excited and honored to share this beautiful issue with all of you and to hear from our authors directly. So we're going to get started. We have 11 wonderful readers today, and our first reader is Diane Zinna. Diane Zinna is the author of the novel The All-Night Sun from Random House and Letting Grief Speak, Writing Portals for Life After Loss, a forthcoming craft book on the art of telling our hardest stories. Her short work has appeared in Brevity, the Bellevue Literary Review, Cutbank, MER, or MER, and elsewhere. Since 2020, she has led the free online class Grief Writing Sundays. Welcome, Diane.
The piece I'm going to read to you tonight is very short, and it was built around 3 newly defined dictionary entries, words that were redefined for me in my grief. And I know that you don't see them on the screen, so I'm going to list them out 1, 2, 3 as we go, and hopefully that will make more sense. This is called Fall Dictionary. Definition 1, rainbow coffee mug, noun. A broken cup found in the still running sink. My mother must have been washing it. It lay in 4 white pieces in the silver gray basin, and she lay on the floor beneath it, her face broken on one side from her fall. Definition 2, parakeet, noun. A small, cherished green bird that dies slowly, feet pulsing open, pulsing closed, clutching the tan plastic perch as though death were the bottom of the cage. The bottom of the cage is a slope of millet shells. If you watch the bird, it will not die. If you sleep, it will flutter down to the soft millet and be buried inside it. You decide to never sleep. And then your boyfriend, before his words, always sweet, wholesome. You thought that he was a heart walking around as a person in a plaid barn coat, in a pale green baseball cap with a curved brim, in a t-shirt for a microbrewery that just said magic, and you believed it. He says, I can finish this. And then he is forever a different person. You look at him as if to say, how could you? He looks at you and gestures as if to say, I could snap its, noun, small, green, cherished bird's neck. Definition 3, birthday, testimony, confession, lie. A bonk on the head, the evening of the day my daughter turned 8. I was getting something from the fridge. I stood up too fast and I hit my head on the freezer door. I felt dizzy for a moment and I screamed. I always cry when I get hurt. A feeling that I'm a bad person rushes forward, but physically that day I was okay. My husband rushed to the kitchen and my daughter. He looked at me in panic. What should I do? He repeated over and over. I slid away from him onto my back, onto the kitchen floor. What should I do? He asked. I heard the water running in the gray silver basin. I wouldn't tell him. I contorted my face, trying to force him into action, into decision. I always knew what to do in a crisis. I hated that he did not know. I hated that he did not even gesture, charades style, should I snap the neck? Prepare for you a soft bed of millet? Stare at you with magnet eyes to keep you perched there upon your elbow? He offered nothing. I whispered, call 911. He said, should I call 911? And I felt separate from him for his not knowing trauma, for him not having learned the lessons I learned early, like when I found my mother's broken coffee cup face on the floor in the millet, vibrant green wings spread, velvet. He said, I should call 911. And I thought, I can have cheeseburger. I was not getting up until he figured out what to do. I remembered his father pleading with his mother on her deathbed. What do I do? And she couldn't respond. And I would never, ever, ever respond. I would not ever, ever, ever. And then my daughter, who had just turned 8 that day, who was still in her birthday dress, screamed, "Mommy!" And I stopped acting a fool. To this day, she remembers all of this with pride. She says, "I helped. I was the one who helped." Thank you.
Next up, we have Crockett Doob. Crockett lives in Rockaway Beach, New York, and does not surf. He does, however, play drums in a vacant courthouse, works with autistic teenagers, and edits a documentary about a cemetery. His writing has been published in Volume 1 Brooklyn, Fiction Attic Press, Querencia Press, Virgo Venus Press, Literally Stories, Unlikely Stories, Horror Sleaze Trash, and High Low Brow. Welcome, Crockett.
If you read along, I'm going to go 3, 1, 2. So the last one first, the first one, and then down. Toilet seat covers. The toilet seat covers look oddly regal, maroon with gold threading. I ordered 6 sets, my mom says. Do you like them? Very much, but you only have 2 toilets. But now we have variety. My mom runs to and from the bathroom after taking her laxatives, continuing conversations from the toilet. Later, my dad takes me to the upstairs bathroom. A little bonus, he says. He nudges the toilet seat down. Thanks to the new padding, the seat goes down slowly. No slam. He has the sweetest smile as he watches me watch the toilet seat go down. Next is Everything with Nothing, which is the first. There's a bagel place I like a block away from work. I go in there and order an Everything with Nothing, which the cashier thinks is funny, and I guess I do too. I've tried to change my order to be more healthy, but not only does a whole wheat Everything with Nothing have no ring to it, but those bagels are labeled WW Everything, which feels too ominous for these times. There's always the plain bagel, and then I wouldn't get quote-unquote everything stuck in my teeth right before work, but a plain with nothing just sounds too depressing. Everything with nothing is like life or the ocean or outer space, so much going on with so much nothing in between. Do you have a cat? When I come home from work, I put on jazz and heat up beans. As I stir the beans, I feel good. Until the thought comes, is this depressing? This is like a thought I used to have when I was in a long-term relationship. Am I in denial? I was. Not that I didn't love her, just that I was happy. I wasn't. So maybe the beans and jazz routine is depressing. Or maybe it isn't, and it's the thinking it's depressing that's depressing. Or maybe it's practical. I'm saving time and energy eating the same thing every night, like Obama wore the same outfit every day, Einstein too. Maybe I'm like them. I am food indifferent, I say to prospective romantic interests or conquest. Who am I kidding? In the drama of The Gifted Child by Alice Miller, she talks about the pattern of conquering and abandoning romantic partners. So maybe statements like, I hate romantic restaurants, hurt my love life. Either way, they're true. I do hate romantic restaurants, and I am food indifferent. My old therapist was a foodie, and she was fascinated by my lack of fascination with food. I wasn't. I didn't find it at all interesting. But my next therapist immediately told me to read Running on Empty, not by Jackson Brown, by Janice Webb, PhD, with Christine Lucello, PsyD, which talks about how food indifference comes from childhood emotional neglect. Definitely depressing. So I'll continue to stir my beans every night while listening to jazz. And if I don't finish the can, I have a wet cat food cover to save the remainder for the next night, which reminds me of a comment I often get. Do you have a cat? Okay, I'm going to read one more. This one got published and then they ghosted me. Ear hair. When you're single long enough, you start to have unrealistic, selfish thoughts like someday my spouse will pluck the ear hair I can't see. Scenarios like quiet nights spent under a lamp inspecting deep into my canals. But I see ear hair at social gatherings, at funerals, and a lot of it belongs to married men. They seem oblivious to it and to my noticing it, and if their spouses notice it, they don't pluck it. They might comment on it, but they leave it to the men to fix it themselves, which they obviously don't. Thank you.
Next up, we have Alysha Black. And Alysha is a writer, teacher, and house fixer-upper living in St. Louis, Missouri. Her work has recently appeared or is forthcoming in Swamp Pink, Iron Horse Literary Review, Fail Better, The Saturday Evening Post, and elsewhere. She is spending next year in Belgium on a Fulbright grant, congratulations, where she'll be teaching and working on her novel. How exciting. She dedicates this story to all the strong, smart, and relentlessly good-humored friends and mothers in her life, and most especially to Aunt Joan. Welcome, Alysha.
I will be reading an excerpt from my short story, The Running Woman. Naya saw the way everyone looked at her as she wheeled her kids around the grocery store at 10 p.m., and she hated it. 5 months had passed since Pieter's death, and still all the supposed empathy people lavished on her felt like pity and looked like embarrassment. As in, no matter how sorry everyone seemed to be about her husband's death, they were at least equally embarrassed by their own good fortunes. Many of the people who had written cards and shown up at her house laden with casseroles and crock-pot meals meant well. She knew that. She also suspected that their generosity was at least somewhat motivated by an impulse to appease the gods in charge of living and dying. What better way to safeguard one's own good fortune than by engaging in the ritualistic exchange of bland food smothered with cheese? Untimely death has its own language, but until you speak it, you don't even know it exists. Naya added a clamshell of grapes and a bunch of bananas to her shopping cart. Surely she had done something quite bad to warrant being left at 39 with a dead husband and 2 kids under the age of 6. Maybe there was simply no other outcome for a woman who stopped breastfeeding her babies before they left the hospital and who was notorious for skimping on bedtime stories when it was her turn, skipping words, sentences, even whole pages just to get it done. Not to mention all the time she'd come home later than strictly necessary when Pieter had a grown-up dinner waiting for them at home. Now trying to shop with 5-year-old Josh and 3-year-old Sylvie nestled among the processed nuggets and off-brand goldfish while they watched YouTube on her phone, Naya felt an ever-growing list of parenting fails seared into her flesh. A sinewy, unforgettable web of scars polka-dotted with fresh welts. She had taken herself out of the running for partner at her law firm after Pieter died, but she was still expected to put in long hours, which meant Josh and Sylvie were the first kids to arrive at preschool for early care and the last ones to leave from aftercare. Most nights when they got home, Naya had just enough energy to do bath, books, songs, and bed. Or cook, not both. Careful with the bananas, she told Josh, repositioning them beside his bare, not particularly clean foot. Usually it was men shopping this late at night, and the ones who'd known Pieter simply stared their condolences at Naya. He'd been one of their own, and for him to drop dead like that, why, it simply didn't make any sense. Women, though, they were the talkers, even if they did do most of it behind her back. This was the only explanation Naya could come up with for why the air around her became thick with silence whenever she walked into a room. Tonight, Naya took note of the woman spiraling ever closer to her grocery cart. She was at least 10 years older than Naya, shorter too, compact with a frame of gray wispy hairs around her face and a dusting of freckles among the lines that were beginning to take hold along her eyes and jowls. The two of them had met a little more than a year ago over a tray of Rice Krispies treats at a neighborhood barbecue. It had been hot, the mojitos generously spiked, and when Naya saw her, she burst out, "You're the running woman!" Because in Naya's mind, the running woman was practically famous. At least once a day for the previous 2 years, Naya had watched her plodding across the landscape outside her dining room window. "And here I've been telling myself no one's paying attention," the woman had said, flushing in a way that was utterly charming. "Running's what keeps me sane. Or, fine, saner. Please call me Martha." Then Martha had pointed out her husband Brian, a tall man with enough hair to count, not too much belly, He was good-looking and a handsome by comparison way that some men acquired in midlife. Later that night, when Naia and Pieter were in bed, Naia told him about her conversation with Martha. "I know Brian from the playground," Pieter said. "His kids are older. The youngest is already in elementary school, but we SAHDs don't discriminate." Pieter regularly lamented the fact that there were so few stay-at-home dads in the neighborhood. He was always trying to get more of them to hang out with their group on the playground or grab a beer over the weekend. "Funny," he said, closing his book and turning off the light. "I never would have pegged Martha for a runner. She's not even in particularly good shape." Pieter's comment had annoyed Naia long after she should have fallen asleep, mainly because she'd been thinking the exact same thing. For all that running, Naia would have wanted to be greyhound sleek, and Martha, even on her best days, was more of a pug. Naia concentrated now on getting out of the grocery store in 10:05, spending no more than 10 minutes saying no more than 5 words. It was a game she'd started playing with herself after Pieter died. Unfortunately, Martha was taking an extraordinary interest in cheese, scrutinizing a block of this and rejecting a brick of that, one after another. Naia would have to walk past her to get to the milk. Naia was just wedging a gallon of milk into the cart behind Sylvie. She was this close to making her escape when Martha said, "Excuse me." She was holding a sneaker that looked remarkably like Josh's, except that Martha's sneaker was covered with stickers and marker, and there was a hole in the sole. "My shoe," Josh said. Balancing the shoe in the palm of her hand, Martha bowed like a fairy tale footman. "I thought you looked like the kind of boy who might own such an extraordinary sneaker." She didn't even comment on the smell. With the armor of the grocery carts between them, Martha said to Naia, "I don't know if you remember me, but—" "You brought us chicken after Pieter died," Naia said. Sympathy chicken, delivered to the back porch in a cooler. Naia had flung away the tin foil before she even got inside the house, plunging 2 fingers into skin so crispy it popped when she broke through. Hunk after hunk of breast meat she tore from the bones and shoveled into her mouth. It was delicious. Best chicken I ever had. Thank you.
Next up, we have Shaun Pieter Clamp. Shaun is a writer and editor living in the UK. He graduated from Rhodes University with a BA in English, philosophy, and law, and a BA honors, I believe that means, in philosophy, for which he received the DCS, oh boy, Oosthuizen Prize. His writing is published in Hobart, Agbowo, La Piccoletta, Barca, Magdalen House, and elsewhere. Welcome, Shaun.
I'll be reading the kind of opening 6 minutes of my story, A Rocket's Tale. The scaffolding falls. I'm a shiny rocket, nose down slope into crater. Imperfect bliss kindles in the mouth of the stone. I make my way down there on wheels. The bright moment will singe my nipples into golden bullets. I'm a fire hydrant, but in the Americana blues. Dolphins flip in the oil puddles. A catastrophe, all this glitter, no one to spoon. At the crater's bottom, I find a little man who speaks out the side of his neck. He says he is my father. Take a seat on this here hot plate. Onto the boiling disk that warms my fuel in my convoluted combustion chambers resembling intestines or a brain. My exhaust pipe putters little farts. Where am I going, I ask. Through the big smoke, son. Through it? To where? I don't know, son. I've never seen a star. Once I'm fully erect, he plays these bellows I have a distinct memory of. Made of pig's bladder, hung above the old fireplace. Out of its nozzle a creamy green foam which titillates the magma, and I hear a low fraternal rumbling, like an all-boys school war cry, the bundled sounds swarming from subterranean chambers with the kinetic energy of fire-born bees, melting the paint and galvanized hull, the scrotum of my booster, the sphincter itself bellying outwards like a blazing carrion flower. I could feel that sound carbonizing my colonic mucus, switching my heart's current to AC, blood and engine oil sirening through zebra crossings of the libidinal universe. All longing transformed, I was simply ready to eat my tail. When the sky is a jungle, there I go, piratical explorer of the Ganges or some such spindrift constellated spoke of our luminous bellwether. I was flying. Ay, Dios míos, ay, Flejo, get your fishhooks out of me. There I ride, my summer-long tailwind pipe-mouth explosion throttling me up until a twinkle in that strange man's eye. On reflection, I never knew the guy, and I've traveled so fast he's already dead, his livestock life spent in my timeline's pen. My tip splits color into heat before my senses can construct or dream a sequenced impression. But there is a smell. It's more of a knowledge. If one were to knit the galaxy's discrete processes into a fibrous stem, at the part where it branches, there I was, so it was more of a sound, a single bite eternally playing and so static and so silent. In the crotch of time's interstellar tree sat a boy whistling the song of his rocket, emerging from the leaves like the ugly hoverfly, hunting his brood from amongst the zodiac. I was free in the way dead things are, orbiting nothing. I was bored that I had yet a body to bear. I won't moan, but it got dark. It was easy to imagine that I was shivering, my thrusters set to Neptune blue. I reminisced of a city I had never seen, arranging it among my ribcage struts, simple towers, transit snaking like coral eggs, tiny torches on the helmets of construction workers who were to be evacuated as soon as the empire was complete. A diamond raised like the Seattle Needle illuminated the governmental district in Eau de Toilette, from whose faceted windows peered regal spermatozoa, neotenic overlords, my future seed. They were arguing, flagellums quaking with fury. Apparently, the brawny infants of Section G had performed a coordinated attack on the off-malign zygotists, taking a number of shrieking cell clusters hostage, dragging them back through fallopian tubes built in secret agreement with the scuttlebug construction workers, stowing them under pyramids resembling general hospitals in the middle of a desert, dark sand blue blowing through the skirts of the Sphinx. And the zygotists had responded by reinstating a long antiquated late-term abortive regime, a scorched birth policy, as it were, on such disproportionate scale that the powers that be, who had squeamishly propped up their spiritual antecedents, were calling ineffectually for a pause, and no one heard them, and fireworks exploded through my little mind, a march of skeletons along picturesque canals. Oh, it was all so involved I began to pray for the spectacular radiation that might reveal our hardwire souls to one another, that our clenched fists remain in the mouths of our lovers, and that our tears be but the tenderest obsolescence of a gag reflex we were already beyond.
Up next, we have Naisha Randhar. Naisha is a published author and Dallas Youth Poet Laureate. She has performed at events such as the Dallas Lit Fest hosted at SMU and the Big Bang Conference panel on what it means to be human. Her poetry is featured in the Thanksgiving Square in Dallas, and she's the youngest guest to be interviewed on the Webby Award-winning TED Ed podcast, How to Be a Better Human. She's been recognized nationally by the National High School Poetry Contest and the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, and her work is published in the National Poetry Quarterly. Welcome, Naisha.
My poem in this issue is very short, so I have a few pieces to read, and it's called You and I, so I'm just going to get into it. My best friend and I grieve the world on the way to school. We walk through chalk pictures, afraid of having kids. like dragonflies in a lit golden cage, like islands, we are silhouettes. That's the first poem. And then I have two more poems, and this poem is called Crush. It is after Banu Kapil's 12 Questions, and if you haven't read The Vertical Interrogation of Strangers, Banu Kapil has 12 questions. They're kind of a lot, and it's hard to describe them, but yeah, no, they're absolutely incredible, and I would recommend it. Crush. Who are you, and will you love the rooms that sound like people? A ring when I decided I was in love. Minutes that come like ghosts, especially this line. What do you remember about the lamplight? Breaks in the four of us, made pasta like a family, handing over spices, kissing foreheads at the dinner table. By 6, some untraceable loss in the pesto primavera. The girl in Brooklyn who likes my short hair. My love, a second mouth. My grief, there is no container for. How have you prepared your guilt? Shivering in my ear, the ringing in my ear. Which is the consequence of silencing the ghosts in my bed enter secretly. We fling in the city, dine with strangers, breathe a storm of lilacs. Tell me what you know of the language of your arms. How will you cope now? I let the sea foam, then retreat. The telephone on the roof, still ringing. I try to think of someone to save me, but I think of you in the back. The last night, filling the seats. The first time I wanted to love you, coming back around like trains. I have one last poem. There are points in the poem where there is a word / another word, and I'll try to make that clear because you don't have it in front of you. I'll try to pause so that you can tell. But other than that, it's a punctuation-less poem, and it's called Love, Period. In the apocalypse, my blood betrays me as a life form. At 11, I lost enough to finally be held, a drag of smoke and bouquet. I sit in dinner with a napkin over my legs like ghosts. I make love to your country, a white disco, me, your wound, rose, born pink and sweaty for the war, winter, in my garden, lips stretched over my teeth, hand to my chest, hold the bare bitch of my heart, the gun swept, deep-throated, strapped to this pill, bed of bullets, so love, so eat, my revolver of pain. Hell, honey, just watch as I bang my fists against this hard creature of the sea to bleed, bleed, bleed in ocean like an animal. I break the surface.
Up next, we have Mikki Aronoff. Mikki writes tiny stories and advocates for animals. Her work has been longlisted for the Wigleaf Top 50 and nominated for Pushcart, Best of the Net, Best Small Fictions, Best American Short Stories, and Best Microfiction. Mikki has stories in Best Microfiction 2024 and Best Small Fictions 2024, and upcoming in Best Small Fictions 2025 and Best Microfiction 2025. She lives in New Mexico. Welcome, Mikki.
Thanks also to Francine Witt. I saw you here. I wrote this story in one of your wonderful pop-up workshops. It's called Just Like That. The night we were hit by the biggest snowstorm in decades, such a surprise that late autumn evening, our middle brother died. No one was prepared for his demise. That shouldn't have been the case, as there were signs, but we're a subtle bunch, more drawn to flat lines and shallow, undulating strokes than to nervous zigzags on charts or graphs. So we never noticed how lately he'd been swiffering, scrubbing, and scouring all his edges and corners, making sure he'd leave no mess. At dinner, we'd been discussing Cousin Sally's divorce and how we could support her, and the neighbor's problem with his oak tree. Out of context, between the cream of celery soup and the croquettes, Roger announced, "I'm not afraid to die." Just like that. We mustered nervous laughs or shifted in our seats, leaned over to pick up imaginary napkins from the floor, wiped invisible mushroom gravy from the cracked corners of our lips. Surface skimmers all, death was not the topic we liked to broach. Roger, much to our discomfort, was skilled at initiating deeper conversations and never one to change the subject. Outside, snow kept falling and falling and falling and falling. The candles on the table were burning down, flames reflecting in the dark dining room window. Roger shifted his fork from right to left and back again. He muttered something about a headache, and did he mind if he took to his room? He murmured regrets as we waved him upstairs. We sat back in our seats, refilled our wine glasses, debated whether the fireplace could use another log. The following morning, Roger didn't show for breakfast. The roads couldn't be cleared. The storm kept the snowplows and ambulance away. We left him uncovered in his four-poster bed and opened the windows to keep his body cold. As we regrouped around the table for tea and toast, jagged lines chiseling into our chests, we stared at the floor, at each other, picking at our crusts. Upstairs, snow drifted in, blanketing his quiet body.
Up next, we have Callie Ann Marsalisi. Callie is originally from New England, where she earned an BS in linguistics from Northeastern University and an MA in speech therapy from UConn. She now lives in Wilmington, Delaware. She writes upmarket fiction, science fiction, and fantasy, usually with prominent LGBT plus characters, and is working on finding an agent for her first novel. When not writing, she works backstage with the Chapel Street Players in Delaware. 456, The Piece in Cleaver, is inspired by her experiences working in healthcare during the COVID-19 pandemic and an encounter with a particularly clever bird in Dublin, Ireland. Welcome, Callie.
I'm going to be reading, I think, most of my short fiction piece, 456. All of the eggs are broken. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Both rows of the carton she mistakenly left open on the counter. Smashed. She closes the carton and thinks. She's sure she checked them at the store. She had just bought them this morning. It's the same routine every week. Half a dozen eggs, checked before being loaded into the child seat of the shopping cart. Every time the same. She doesn't remember checking them the specific time, but she knows she did. She should have noticed 6 broken eggs. She looks over the messy counter. A to-do list, half crossed off. Another plant she's on her way to killing. A letter from her doctor, opened and crumpled. Eggs, useless. It's possible that she has a migraine coming on. But the things she sees before a migraine strikes are more subtle. The silhouette of a backseat passenger seen in a glance at the rearview mirror. A shape in the corner, gone directly when she looks at it. She has never hallucinated something directly in front of her in the bright incandescent light of her kitchen. She throws the eggs in the trash without reopening the carton and moves on with her day. By the time she gets out of the shower, it is dark outside, hardly a light or a movement to be seen beyond the windows. She may as well be at the bottom of the ocean, with her hair wet and the floor cold under her feet. In moments like this, she sometimes feels like she is the only person left in the world, like something seismic has happened while she was in the shower. As she eats dinner, she is dimly surprised to find that it is only 5 o'clock. She lets a few minutes slip by and then looks at the clock again to find that now it is 9. Nothing has changed except another 4 hours of life are gone. She is in the same chair, underwater, the smell of eggs wafting over from the trash can. Maybe they were rotten. She thinks over all the ways she should have spent those 4 hours, and when she has finished thinking, it is 10 o'clock. 12 hours later, she sits down in front of a man she has just met and asks him what year it is. 1952. If it were 1952, this man would be young. He would be yet unmarried. He would be in the Air Force, a pilot. He would not have so many lines on the backs of his hands. The notes from the doctor say that his vision is good. It is not his vision that she is there to examine. She has been taught not to correct her patients. It is far more taxing for a person to have their reality torn asunder each and every day than it is for the people around them to navigate their shifted perceptions. Living in 1952 is better than living in a hospital bed, better than living at the bottom of the ocean. The man fares better on the tasks of automatic word production, naming the days of the week and the months of the year with ease. But when he is asked to count to 20, he changes. 1, 2, 3, he says. 4, 5, 6. Dear, I finished high school. Top of my class. You know I know this. Actually, she does not know. A mind is a deceptive thing, and a step that looks sure may be camouflaging a hollow space underneath. She pushes the man to take that step, to see if it will hold fast or falter, but he refuses. In the end, she is forced to mark the task as incomplete. She thinks of her own to-do list, half crossed out, incomplete. She thinks of her own mind and how it already plays tricks on her. She looks at the man across from her and wonders what differences you would see if you cut open the tops of their skulls and took a look inside. He smiles and asks her who she is, for the 3rd time in 40 minutes. And so it goes. In each room, she steps into a new reality, one in which she is at best a supporting character and at worst a movement in the periphery to be seen and forgotten in the same instant. Her coworkers buzz in and out of rooms, hardly time for a greeting, let alone small talk, let alone human connection. Sometimes she wonders what would happen if she just started screaming, the way she has heard some patients do. She imagines it would be forgotten as soon as she closed her mouth. She goes to walk into the next room to see one of her favorite patients, but when she arrives, the room is empty. The bed is stripped of sheets. Her heart races, wondering if the woman has passed and someone has forgotten to tell her. She could ask someone and find out, but instead she decides to go back to the end of the hall and walk down it again, counting the rooms to make sure she's in the right one. 1, 2, 3. A gap for the nurses' desks. 4, 5, 6. There's the patient, sitting up and drinking tea, lighting up when she walks into the room. She had been in the wrong room, somehow. The old woman notices her relief and asks her what's wrong. She makes up a story about being late. Sometimes it's better not to tell a person your fears. Better not to take away their happiness for the sake of being honest. The rest of the day passes much as every other Monday passes. When she returns home, it is dark again, and she feels safe when she is inside her bubble of light floating in the darkness, returns to her own reality. But no sooner has she taken off her shoes than she realizes she will have to leave again. She'll have to go back to the store if she wants eggs in the morning. She is buttoning up her coat when she hears it. From the kitchen, there's a ruffle and a bang and the sound of something being gently placed on the counter. She freezes, standing between the kitchen and the only door in and out of the apartment. She thinks of leaving, chalking it up to one of those sounds that somehow gets amplified by the mind, the sound of a building settling that for some reason or another triggers the fight or flight response. But she knows she has to check. She clicks on the light and startles the bird sitting on the counter. It is black and white with touches of blue on each wing, a magpie. It cocks its head at her, wondering why she has dared interrupt it in its task of pillaging her kitchen counter. It has pushed open the nearby window, the one with the faulty lock that sometimes comes undone in a storm. She sees that the window is open, but even still she convinces herself that the bird is not there, but rather just a product of her tired mind, her aching brain. The notes from the doctor say that her vision is good. In a few seconds, the bird will shift, ruffle its feathers and adjust its leg, and it will knock over the fork she left on the kitchen counter. In a few seconds, the bubble will pop, and she will have nothing to do but scream. 1, 2, 3.
Up next, we have Lane Osborne. Lane earned his MFA from Warren Wilson College and teaches at Coastal Carolina University, where he serves as the faculty nonfiction editor for Waccamaw. His work, which has previously been nominated for a Pushcart Prize and was a finalist for a Rash Award in Fiction, has appeared in various journals, including Chautauqua, Smoke Lawn Quarterly, and Story South. Welcome, Lane.
I'll be reading from my short nonfiction essay, Body Memory. Not at what remained of his left leg or the prosthesis propped in the corner with the sagging white sock and black sneaker, or the cluster of orange pill bottles on the coffee table. No, I tried not to stare at the black sneakered foot on his good leg, toe-tapping in a rhythm that reminded me how he and my aunt used to love to dance at the local VFW, what he often called shaking a leg. He slouched next to my aunt on the sofa in their den, khaki pant leg pinned at the thigh, and we started with small talk. The traffic on our trip, work, school, recent weather. But before long, the conversation turned to his surgery. As he described his doctor, the nurses, and the white-walled halls, I could picture him on that day. Surgical cap, pale blue gown, a dotted, sharpied line on his left leg reminding his doctor, "Cut here." My uncle rubbed at the end of the stump as he spoke, and I wondered if he could still feel what was missing. Muscle, sinew, bone. I'd read before how phantom limb syndrome affects some patients, how they can still feel their missing appendage long after it's gone, how the body has memory. Losing the leg was the easy part, my uncle said. He was leather tough, a World War II Army combat veteran who lied about his age to enlist at 17. He was an infantryman, a foot soldier, who was awarded a Bronze Star and earned a Purple Heart and honorable discharge when he took shrapnel from enemy fire. I followed his gaze to the off-the-shelf prosthesis he could afford with his VA benefits as he admitted that rehab is the real dadgum work, learning how to walk again. Maybe he added the words baby steps when he said that, or maybe now I only imagine he did, as I wonder about the shared origins of infantry and infant. When my uncle returned home from the war, he traded combat boots for brogans and built homes in South Carolina's Midlands, including his cedar-sided ranch. At the end of most work days, he'd tend to his garden in dirt-darkened sneakers, weeding, seeding, or hand-hoeing rows. Come spring, he'd slip on deck shoes, trailer his skiff to the Saluda River, catching his limit of channel cats, crappie, bluegill, and bass, so he could host fish fries for family and friends with hush puppies, kettle chips, and slaw. Some summers he had traveled to my aunt's coastal hometown where they might go barefooted at the beach, where he might wade knee-deep in the ocean, sand squishing between his toes. Autumns were often spent at their cabin in the Smokies, where I imagine he had propped his trail-scuffed hikers on the back deck railing, interlace his fingers behind his head, and tilt his face toward the day's last light. And every winter, when my brother, our cousins, and I were children, our uncle played Santa, red suit, broad-buckled belt, black boots, stomping into our grandmother's great room with a gift sack slung over his shoulder. During a conversational lull, my aunt stood from the sofa, muttering something to my uncle about help with coffee and cake in the kitchen, so he reached for his prosthesis. He unpinned his pant leg and shimmied it up until his pink thigh poked out. He stretched liner socks over the end of it, grunted as he stuffed the stump into the fake leg and steadied himself on the sofa arm as he stood. His first few steps, shuffling limps, were tentative, as though he had to remind himself how to walk again, left, right, left. Just when it looked like he had it all under control, he stumbled. Before anyone could even react, he had already reached out, catching my aunt by her hand and hip, nearly toppling them both over before righting himself in her arms. It was only a brief imbalance, so easily overlooked, but there was something special in that otherwise unremarkable moment, wasn't there? Some somatic recall in the dip, the spin, the sway, their bodies settling into a close embrace, as though moving to music only they could hear.
Up next, we have Liana Johnson. Liana is a fiction writer whose work has appeared in Tiny Molecules, Moon Park Review, and the South Shore Review. She holds an MFA in writing from Vermont College of Fine Arts and has been a participant in the One Story Summer Writers Conference and a fellow at the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. She's at work on a short story collection. Originally from a small town in Vermont, she now lives and writes in New York City. Welcome, Liana.
I'm going to read the first few minutes of my story, which is called Exposure. Haven't you ever been spurned by a lover? Ms. Smith said in her outside voice. Our 6th grade English class was acting out The Crucible in the school library. Ms. Smith directed the question to Jake, who played John Proctor, and Ashley, who played Abigail Williams. The rest of us sat on the floor with our legs crossed, yawning, chewing our nails, or picking at the matted carpet. Ms. Smith imparted life lessons to her young pupils that weren't found in any curriculum, and the lesson that day in 1998, it seemed, would have to do with spurning. We're 12, said Ashley. Ms. Smith sighed. Someday you'll be spurned. For now, you need at least to know how to act viciously. Surely you've wanted to strangle someone, a sibling, a friend? Bunching up her long skirt, she leaned down to Ashley and Jake's level with a mischievous smile. Miss Smith was nearly the same age as our grandparents, and she had more verve than most of the other teachers at school. She was tall, with short white hair, and often warned us that she would soon be entirely blind in one eye. Her black, gray, and brown clothes draped her thin frame as if they didn't want to cling too close. She'd roll up her sleeves multiple times a day as a threatening gesture to her students, other teachers, or parents, especially those who complained that 6th grade was too young for the crucible. Miss Smith believed our parents sheltered us and that we should be free to get hurt and get tough and now apparently spurned. And if they wouldn't see to it, she would. Exposure, she called it, the opposite of being sheltered. While Ms. Smith gave Ashley and Jake notes, Brian, a class clown who didn't have many friends, tore a sheet of paper from his notebook and ripped it into bits, which he crumpled into balls and flicked at various classmates. He got me right on the forehead with one of them. Some kids fired the ammunition back at Brian, and the papers gathered in the crotch of his cargo shorts. Miss Smith raised her voice. She's putting on a show, don't you see? Ham it up. Shadow. Ashley muttered, Oh, Heavenly Father. A show, Ashley. She must be convincing. Ashley shouted, I don't want to play Abigail Williams. I exchanged glances with Trish and Sarah, my best friends. We used to be friends with Ashley, but the previous year, she began spending less time with us and more time with Julia and Maggie, bright, charming girls who returned from school breaks with new, envy-inspiring outfits, until the three of us understood that Ashley no longer belonged to our group. The rejection devastated us, but we would never let Ashley or anybody else know how we felt. We were quiet girls. We didn't make a fuss. Instead, we scribbled our heartaches onto scraps of crinkled paper that we passed back and forth between classes. Ms. Smith, rarely moved by the pleas of her students, relented to Ashley after some squabbling, but didn't let her out of the play entirely. Let's try again, Ms. Smith said to the class. Ashley will play Mary this time. I need a new Abigail, and let's also get a Herrick, a Danforth, a Frances, a Mercy, and a Hawthorne so we can do the full scene. I rose to my knees. I never volunteered to participate, but this was my chance to be paired in a scene with Jake, an effortlessly cool boy and gifted basketball player who of all the guys in my class had the waviest hair. Usually too nervous to speak to him, I resorted to stealing glances throughout the day. Once while we watched a Bill Nye the Science Guy video, the lights turned down, I could have sworn I caught him staring back at me through the dark. The play created the perfect opportunity to force us together. Hands shot into the air, mine above everyone else's. Ms. Smith called out, Rick, you're Herrick, Shaun, you're Danforth, Brad, you're Francis, Julia, you're Mercy, Connor, you're Hawthorne. Then her gaze landed on me. She raised her eyebrows. Kara, she said, a small smile forming. Say the O Heavenly Father line. It's on the same page we were just reading from. You were following along? I shouted like a cheerleader. Oh, Heavenly Father, take away this shadow. Less excitement, more despair, but good enough. You're Abigail.
Up next, we have Charlotte Gulick. Charlotte is a writer and educator with an MFA in creative nonfiction from the Institute of American Indian Arts. Charlotte's novel, By Way of Water, was published by Blue Hen Books, and her nonfiction has appeared in The Rumpus, Brevity, The Best of Brevity, Pembroke, Dogwood, and The MacGuffin. Welcome, Charlotte.
This is a piece that I wrote. I've written a lot about my father's death, and then I started to write about the quieter moments around his death. So this is a piece of flash nonfiction called Wedding Dress. Right now, the daughter and father are alone. The girlfriend, his, sits outside. She pulls on a joint, just distancing herself from this, his dying. The girlfriend tries to make room for his children, for the connection that does not, cannot include her. She draws the smoke in, piercing the July afternoon with her responding cough. Inside, the daughter sits quietly with him. He has 3, but it feels like so many more when the girlfriend wants to be with him alone. At least they don't sleep here. Not yet. But she knows this is coming, that as the tumor grows in malignant terror, his girls, as he calls them, even though they are all grown, will circle tighter. Careful, she cautions herself. It's vital she remain positive. That's how they will beat the cancer. She needs to tend her thoughts. This tending and some remedies she has taken from a native book, she is sure he's Indian, will beat the disease. If only she could make the bond with him stronger. She holds out her right hand, examining the engagement ring that she's decided to wear today, despite how many times the diamond has cut him. The ring and its rock, what binds them now, that and 9 years of living together. The daughter is with him now. She'd become ordained. She'd performed a wedding and a baby christening. Wasn't this sharing in itself a nod that this daughter would approve if the man and the girlfriend married? The dress was picked out in a thrift store 6 months before, after he offered the ring. It hangs in the closet in white expectancy. She'd look magnificent in the dress, even the store clerk had said so. Despite the scratchiness of the bodice, it was a glory to wear, and if they couldn't have a long life together, they could have this bedside wedding, the exchange of vows, something to hold on to as his life slipped away, if the prayers and spells and incantations didn't do what she so deeply hoped. Maybe the daughter's mother's Jehovah's Witness religion and its holiday austerity was more of an issue than he'd ever disclosed to his family. He liked dressing up, especially since he was often so dirty, collecting garbage, cutting trees, running cattle. He was someone who worked, and when he wasn't working, he wanted to feel clean, impressive, a person sharp in dress and personality. He had his town clothes, the black felt cowboy hat, the black boots, the silver and turquoise bolo tie. The daughter leaves in the early afternoon. She'll return in a couple of hours. The idea loops around the girlfriend. She twirls the ring, not so annoyed now that he didn't get it sized. She sits by the phone, his napping breaths only a few feet away in the other room. With a straightening of posture, she calls the house where the daughter is staying, asking, "Can you marry us?" The daughter doesn't say no, doesn't say yes. In that space, the girlfriend's hope blooms. Later, when the sun tips towards the mountains, night curling in the shadows, the daughter returns. The girlfriend and the man lie on the bed. The daughter is in the other room, quiet. And from the bedroom, the girlfriend calls, "We're in here." Her voice is steadier than she feels. The daughter steps to the threshold, and the girlfriend rises to take the wedding dress, an A-line, 50 styles, lace-covered garment from the closet. where it has waited with the Western cut shirts and denim jackets. She holds it up, a small quaver in the words. What do you say, Big Jack? Let's get married. The man, sluggish in his illness, his morphine, his waking from day sleeping, struggles to open his eyes. The girlfriend's gaze stays steady on his face for any indication of whether the answer is yes. They wait. A dog barks outside, a big rig downshifts on the highway, climbing the grade. The man's hands jerk and tremble in their own private dying dance. The girlfriend pulls the dress close, holding tightly to what might have been. Finally, she takes a deep breath, nods, and nestles the gown back into the closet. She runs her hand over a sleeve, the texture of the lace, its grid pattern. The engagement ring slides on her finger as she turns back to the man and his daughter, asking for the grace of acceptance, its own kind of prayer.
And finally, our last reader of the evening is Michelle Bidding. Michelle has been commissioned by the Los Angeles Cultural Affairs Department for her original poem, Twyla, as a finalist in the Paris Olympiad Cultural Exchange in September 2024. She was shortlisted for the 2023 Craft Character Sketch Challenge, the 2020 Montreal International Poetry Prize, and named a finalist for the 2021 Coniston Prize and 2020 Reed Magazine Edwin Markham Prize. She's the author of 6 poetry collections, including Nightmares and Miracles from Two Sylvia's Press in 2022, winner of the Wilder Prize, and named one of Kirkus Review's 2022 Best of Indie. Her chapbook, Dummy Ventriloquist, was published in July 2024 by CNR Press. Recent poetry appears on The Slowdown, Thrush, Cleaver, the Poetry Society of New York's Milk Press, Catamaran, and is featured as Poem of the Week in the Missouri Review. Bidding holds an MFA in creative writing and a PhD in mythological studies, emphasis poetry and psychology. She is writing a novel that centers around Los Angeles and her great-grandmother, stage and screen actor Beryl Mercer, and is senior lecturer in creative writing and literature at Loyola Marymount University. Welcome, Michelle.
I'm going to read this brief, creative, nonfiction-y thing. It's got some braiding of lines from the 1931 film, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And the piece itself is called Still Life with Family and the Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. My analysis of this soul, the human psyche, leads me to believe that man is not truly one, but 2. Lounging around the living room floor of our West Los Angeles home, my brother and I loved gazing up at shelves filled with old books, some first editions that our father, an English major with nascent dreams of being a writer, loved. That dream didn't last long. Engaged and then married to our beautiful mother very young, and not long after, with a child on the way, he committed himself to studying law. The books, we assumed, were favorites: Steinbeck, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Melville, and Robert Louis Stevenson. All white males, no one noted. One of him strives for the nobilities of life. The other seeks an expression of impulses that bind him to some dim animal related to earth. There were yellowed volumes with embroidered leather spines tracking back to the late 19th century. These had been the property of our actor great-grandparents, Holmes Herbert and Beryl Mercer, and included venerable editions of Shakespeare and an array of plays by J.M. Barrie, whom Beryl had known well, having acted numerous characters in his works on the Victorian London circuit, and later here in the States. A muse to the playwright? Short and dumpling round, never the leading lady or ingenue, yet always an essential character, a standout. No one realized a role like her. These 2 impulses carry out an eternal struggle in the nature of man, yet they are chained together. Often the old tomes included elaborate etchings of dramatic scenes. I loved those image-embellished books. Also, the delicate tissue paper sheets that covered each one like pressed flower petals, and when gently lifted away, revealed visions, sometimes magical, sometimes terrifying, of the provocative plot moments chosen for artistic rendering. And that chain spells repression to the evil, remorse to the good. In addition to my personal favorite, an authentically gritty version of Grimm's fairy tales with its pictures of fire and coal-eating black poodles, eviscerated hearts, I was especially obsessed with the vintage edition of Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. No doubt, this had belonged to my great-grandfather Horace. Now, if these two selves could be separated from each other, how much freer the good in us would be. In particular, I recall the haunting illustrations of a top-hatted Hyde savagely stomping a small girl underfoot, blood pooling beneath her as he hurries into the dead of night through fog and shadow-sotted London streets. At 8 years old, my horror, my craving to investigate, along with a taste of the macabre, was whetted. What heights the soul might scale, and the evil self, once liberated, would trouble us no more. In the 1931 film Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, starring Frederick March, who won the Oscar for his titular role, Holmes, nay Horace, Herbert, my great-grandfather, plays Harry Jekyll's sensible and pragmatic colleague, Dr. Lanyon. This confidant, Dr. Lanyon, attempts to divert his brilliant friend's obsession with dangerous, unorthodox experiments that require swallowing toxic chemicals from bubbling alembics designed to allow one's true feral and beastly nature, one's darkest repressed urges to emerge, the marriage of monster and man. Free, deniers of life, if you could see me now. A back door in his laboratory allows the transformed Mr. Hyde to slip into the night and wreak mayhem undetected, decorum and maintaining one's masked, civilized self being essential to upholding Victorian societal standards. Meanwhile, Jekyll's fiancée, Muriel, is kept out of reach by her controlling father. Love and satisfaction are thwarted to the point of madness. So, why not drink the elixir and let his inner animal have at it with free-spirited Ivy, the red light woman he's got holed up in a seedier part of town? Perhaps you prefer those hypocrites. Once when I came home from college for the summer, I had dyed my hair a vibrant henna red. My father's immediate response, "You look like a French whore." I was crushed. My self-esteem was desert low already after several years of relationships with men that often ended badly, if not traumatically. Those fine, manicured gentlemen who like your lace but talk about your garters. My brother was my soulmate and my abuser. My father got involved with women other than my mother and yet was vehemently disapproving when I lost my virginity at 16. His father, Richard, got my grandmother Joan pregnant when he was 17. That was 1937. They eloped to Las Vegas in the dead of night, undetected. Horace fooled around on Beryl, and in 1925 left her to perform most of the child rearing. Forgive me, my dear. You see, I hurt you because I love you. My brother could turn on a dime, especially as we grew into our 20s, and the unpredictable, often violent behaviors connected with his manic depression and schizoaffective disorder emerged, exacerbated by self-medication with drugs and alcohol. One minute we'd be laughing, and the next he'd have a lamp perched above my head, threatening to smash my brains in. Under this exterior, you'll find the very flower of man. My grandmother, Joan, loved to talk with me about her hardworking entertainment industry parents, but our conversations were often cut short under the critical eye of her husband, my grandfather, Richard. The shadow of old age and her mental decline didn't help, and then she died. Now I'm alone in the dark with ghosts, with Joan, with Beryl, survivor, star, silent matriarch of the family, and I try to make sense of voices, of images, all that shimmers, sinister and bright, like chemicals across screens before me. It's a monstrous undertaking. Every day I morph a bit more. When I disappear beyond myself, often for hours at a time, I become the proffered flower, its sweet pungency, a real and potent bloom in my great-grandmother's imaginary hand.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing your work, for trusting Cleaver to be a home for your work. We hope that you will continue to submit work to us, read the magazine. Every second Sunday of the month, we have something called Ass and Chair, which is a commitment for you to write in a sort of charged space with folks. We also have Embodied Resistance, which is Karen's yoga class that she teaches. And then every final Sunday of the month, we have a class. And upcoming, we have Transcending the Tumult right now with Beth Kephart. And we also have a short-term flash fiction intensive running with Catherine Kulpa, starting August 2nd through 10th. So yeah, keep an eye out for everything that's going on. Thank you again for being here. Thanks to our wonderful readers and writers. And happy writing. Stay well, and we'll see you soon.